Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome into Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. So a couple of things. One, we're continuing to rebrand the show, and you're going to see that as we've renamed the segments. My producers and social media managers have gotten together, and we've come up with a great plan, so I'm excited about that. And also, I know what you're saying to yourself. Hey, why are you not on at the regular time? This is just for a weekend. We're still going to be on every other Saturday at 9:30 Eastern right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54. So appreciate you taking the time to watch today. All right, so for the MTC call sheet today, building the perfect quarterback. Making sure that you understand what that means. So I'm going to give you my top 5 attributes of what a quarterback needs, I think, to be phenomenal and ideal in the NFL. And on the next segment, which we're calling the Chain Gang Chat, I'm still going to answer your questions via social media about all things NFL. And in my nonsense narrative, there's this conventional wisdom that because a player is great or because he's a Hall of Famer or a future Hall of Famer, that he deserves to have a Super Bowl under his belt. And that's just nonsense. I'm going to tell you why that's nonsense during my favorite segment of the show. And last but not least, there's always been a stigma about black quarterbacks starting in the NFL. And if you look at the landscape of the starters now, that stigma should be erased and never brought up again. All that and more here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with the opening toss. All right, so everybody has their own quarterback rankings. And I see them every week. I actually see them every day. And I don't cringe all the time because you can have your opinion. I have mine. But what makes me cringe is that when you ask somebody why their top 5 quarterbacks are who they are, they really don't have an explanation. Or the explanations that they come up with have little to do with what's going on the field for these quarterbacks. And a lot of times they do it based on projections. Well, we can project a lot of things, but why don't we try to dissect and ascertain what it is that we're looking at, right? So that's what I want to do here. So I'm going to give you my top 5 attributes, starting with number 5, and that's arm strength. And when you're talking about arm strength, one, I'm going to talk about Josh Allen. All right? Because the arm strength of Josh Allen is phenomenal. The arm strength of a Matthew Stafford is phenomenal. And why is arm strength important? Well, because every quarterback doesn't play in the dome. Josh Allen doesn't play in the dome. Not only does he not play in the dome, he plays in inclement weather, man. He's in Buffalo. So he plays in the rain. He plays in the snow. He plays in the wind. And he's got to be able to cut through those elements to get the football to his running backs or his receivers. That's just the way it is. Josh Allen can also make any throw on a football field. Across the hashes, outside the numbers, it doesn't matter. He's not limited. And there are a lot of quarterbacks that are limited when it comes to their arm strength. Josh Allen can also make off-platform throws because he has that strong of an arm. So if you're a quarterback with a strong arm, please believe that I think having a strong arm is important. I'm just sitting here telling you that a lot of GMs and a lot of prognosticators, whatever you want to call them, pundits who watch the game, I think they overvalue arm strength because they look at it as, oh, man, this is such a great physical tool, but it doesn't mean that a quarterback is phenomenal just because he has a strong arm. Because I've seen quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson have a strong arm. He has one of the worst completion percentages in the NFL the last 20 years. So arm strength alone doesn't make you great. Look at a Jamal Russell or Ryan Leaf back in the day. Arm strength doesn't mean anything if you don't know what to do with it. However, it is important, but it's my 5th most important attribute when it comes to an ideal and a perfect quarterback. All right, let's get back to the list. So at number 4, escapability. And by escapability, I mean the ability to look outside the pocket, run outside the pocket, and move within the pocket. So you see Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP, could have been a 3-time MVP. He's probably the most accomplished and best dual-threat quarterback, not just in the game today, but in general. So why is Lamar Jackson so dynamic? It's because he understands that being in the pocket is where you win football games. But being able to move the pocket, being able to run for 10 or 15 or 20 yards can extend drives as well. And I've always said this. I am always in favor of the dual-threat quarterback over a quarterback who is just stationary in the pocket. Because I think a lot of times people assume that if you say dual-threat, well, there's just a running quarterback. He can't win within the pocket. And that's not what we're saying. The term dual means 2, right? Dos. That means that there are a multitude of ways in which this quarterback can beat you. So I don't care if it's 3rd and 3 and you have to pick up a first down with your legs, or if it's 4th and 6 and you have to throw a slant route for us to score the game-winning touchdown. Whatever it takes to get the job done is what I need, which is why escapability is so important. But again, just like arm strength, in a lot of people's minds, these would be at the top of the list. But for Bam's list, arm strength is number 5, and escapability is number 4. So let's get to the third most important attribute that I think a quarterback needs to have. All right, accuracy. So, to me, this is a no-brainer. And this may be even a little low for some people. To be accurate means that you're on time and that you're putting the football where you want it. Have you ever heard the term that a quarterback throwing a receiver open? That simply means that receivers are covered in the NFL because DBs are top-notch. Remember, you're talking about the highest level of play, the highest level of acumen, the highest level of talent, the highest level of athleticism at the NFL. So because of that, there's not a lot of separation. Only the best receivers and a small percentage of them get separation. So quarterbacks have to do their job by throwing them open. So if these back shoulder throws, these back shoulder fades, on these routes where you're making sure that the receiver doesn't have to turn around to catch the football, he can immediately get upfield. That's so important. You know, Joe Montana once said that he threw swing routes, which are little bubble routes, to his running backs over 100 times at practice. Do you know why Joe Montana did that? He said, because the ability for me to put the ball out in front of the running back to where he catches it and does not break stride is the difference between winning and losing. And I agree with him. See, sometimes we look at a throw and we say, oh, the completion was made, but could the completion have been made a little bit more precisely so the receiver or the running back didn't have to break stride, or they didn't have to slow down, or that ball that's 5 yards out front is a touchdown rather than having to be underthrown and now it being a jump ball to where you keep possession rather than scoring 6. Accuracy is important, and it's the third most important attribute in my estimation for a quarterback. All right, let's go to number 2. All right, decision-making. So this is where I want to talk about Joe Burrow. And I'll tell you like this. There aren't a lot of better decision-makers in the NFL than Joe Burrow. And I'm talking about putting 2 hands on the football. I'm talking about understanding how to evade the rush. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes losing as a quarterback is good decision-making. Well, Bam, what do you mean losing is good decision-making? How does that make sense? Well, because if you're getting rushed, especially on first down, is it a better decision to throw the ball away and take a sack? Or how about scrambling and throwing the ball out of bounds? It's way better throwing the ball out of bounds than it is to take a sack in that moment, right? Or what about trying to make a play and you're not covering the ball with 2 hands? Or what about making sure that, hey, you've got a receiver down the field, but he's double-teamed, but you got a back in the flats. Let me hit the back. So right now I picked up 7 yards as trying to go for the home run. Those things matter. And decisions lead to yards gained. Yards gained lead to field position. Field position lead to touchdowns. And touchdowns ultimately can lead to W's. But if you are trying to win the war on every single battle, you're probably going to end up making terrible decisions. If you haven't seen Will Levis for the Titans play the last couple of seasons, go and watch him. Now, you may want to get some medicine when you watch him because it might make you sick at some of the decisions that he's made, but that's what I mean. Because some of these guys are so supremely talented, they try to make every play because they physically can. And not knowing your mental limitations and having bad decision-making will break a team. I'm here to tell you that. And decision-making is the number 2 most important attribute of any quarterback. All right, let's go to number 1. Durability. Point blank, period. If you're not on the field, you can't be great. And this is why I talked about Patrick Mahomes. Not only his record, but his ability to stay on the field. This man, I think, has played over, 85% of the snaps since he's been in the NFL or some crazy number like that. He doesn't miss games. He doesn't. And that's why this team is in position they're in and year out. I'm going to say the same thing about Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's been hurt year in and year out, but he's a durable guy. He's been playing forever. Durability matters because your greatest ability is availability. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the Chain Gang Chatter. I'll be able to answer your questions via social media. We'll be back with more Move with Chains right after this. And welcome back to the show. Before we get into Chain Gang Chatter and answer your question via social media, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for hosting Move the Chains. Secondly, I want to thank you, the fans. You're a big reason, whether you're watching on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whether you're watching on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54 or subscribe to our YouTube channel. I truly thank you for the opportunity. And last but not least, to the best production crew in the business, guys, I'm just telling you, these men and women get it done. So shout out to the best production crew anywhere around, right here on Move the Chains. Hey, but you know how we do it. It's time for the Chain Gang Chatter. All right, so this is my opportunity to answer questions via social media. I love it. And you guys are the Chain Gang, right? People who move the chains during the game of the Chain Gang. So that's how we came in with this, all right? So what's the first question of the day? What aspect of team success is overlooked? I'm telling you, and it's special teams, but it's not just special teams. It's the kicking game. Because you're looking at Justin Tucker. Now, Justin Tucker has, of course, been released by the Baltimore Ravens. He's suffering a 10-game suspension for some of the allegations that he's dealt with for off-the-field things. But what I'm telling you is Justin Tucker and any good kicker puts their team in position to win football games simply because the offense doesn't necessarily have to go the distance. Think about this. If you're a quarterback and you know that in order for you to score the game-winning touchdown or for you to get in position to kick the game-winning field goal, you only need to get to the opponent's 45-yard line or 40-yard because your kicker kicks 57, 60, 63-yard field goals consistently. Think about the amount of pressure that takes off of you. Plus, when you're talking about the punting game, field position matters, ladies and gentlemen. And when you have phenomenal field position, that means that you're making the other team's offense go 80, 90 yards, which means your defense is in a more advantageous position to get a stop. And then your offense gets a short field because when they punt it back to you, you might catch the ball at the 50. And so it's all a cycle, and it all helps. So I think it's one of the most overlooked aspects of football, special teams, but specifically the kicking game. All right, what's the second question we have here? Did the Falcons make a mistake by signing Kirk Cousins? Listen, man, if the answer is yes and no. If they tried to sign Kirk Cousins because they wanted him to win a Super Bowl, then the answer is no. He's not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. If the answer was to get a guy for 2 or 3 years to bridge the number one pick that you took in the first round in terms of Michael Penix Jr., then the answer is no. They didn't make a mistake. And I told you, I love the fact that they drafted Penix Jr. after signing Kirk Cousins. And I told you the signing of Kirk Cousins was a good signing because it made you better, but it didn't make you a Super Bowl contender. Now, what I will say here is Kirk Cousins recently said that he felt misled because he felt as if he knew the Falcons were going to draft a quarterback in the first round, he might have stayed with Minnesota. Well, I'm going to tell you this, Kirk. You've been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in terms of getting your money. And you got your money in Atlanta. So you understand that this is a business first. So you understand that there's a draft that's happening. You understand there's free agency. So I think you misled yourself. You wanted to believe what you wanted to believe. So at the end of the day, it was the play of Kirk Cousins that got him taken out of the position of being a starter quarterback. It wasn't them drafting. Because I'm telling you, no matter what, Kirk Cousins probably wasn't starting the rest of the season in Atlanta as a starter last year because he just didn't play well. But congratulations on that money. But don't think you were misled because they drafted a quarterback. You could say they were misled because you didn't perform at the level that you or they wanted you to. All right, what's my last question? What's the most overrated stat in the NFL? So I had to talk with my director, Ernest, and he said the most overrated stat was time of possession. And I said, I get it. Time of possession doesn't always matter. But in my estimation, it's completion percentage. Hey, do you know that when you throw an interception as a quarterback, your completion percentage doesn't change? It doesn't get worse? Why? It's a pass attempt, right? But it's not an incompletion, so it doesn't go down. Or what about, like I said, great decision makers at the quarterback position throw the ball away a lot of the times in order to save a drive so they don't get sacked. But that negatively impacts your completion percentage. And what about a little pop pass where you're running a jet sweep and you just touch the ball and literally hand it to the receiver, but it is an inch in the air, so that's a completion? It's overrated. You have to look at it within the context, all right? I'm not saying all completions don't matter because they help you matriculate the ball down the field, but don't sit here and tell me, look, this quarterback's a 69% completion percentage. He's the best in the NFL when 70% of your throws are 3 yards down the field. I'm not negating the importance. I'm simply saying all completions are not the same, and the completion percentage is not the end-all, be-all when it comes to quarterbacks. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be my favorite segment of the show. That'll be my nonsense narrative. Back with more Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back to the show. And I'm not going to delay this any longer, man. It's time for my favorite segment of the show. It's time for the nonsense narrative. I want to tell you something. Just because a player is phenomenal, just because he's a TJ Watt and he's an all-pro, just because he's a Myles Garrett and he may be the best defensive player in football, And just because he's a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who's a two-time MVP, and just because he's Josh Allen, who can make any throw on the field or make any play on the field, doesn't mean that they have to be Super Bowl champions. It doesn't mean that they deserve a Super Bowl. You know why? Because we know that there are more people in the Hall of Fame that don't have Super Bowls than those that do, because it's that hard of a feat. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the NFL. And you have to understand that in the NFL, nothing's promised. So I don't care how great you are. I want to stop hearing people say that, oh, you know what, Jamar Chase is phenomenal, man. He deserves a Super Bowl. No, you only deserve a Super Bowl when you earn it. You only deserve a Super Bowl when you get to the conference championship game, you're the best team in your conference, and then you beat the team from the other conference and win the Super Bowl, and you hoisting that Lombardi trophy. Right? Joe Burrow's a phenomenal quarterback. He's been to the Super Bowl. What if he doesn't win one? Dan Marino never won one. Jim Kelly never won one. Barry Sanders never won one. These are some of the best players in the history of this great sport. So just because your accolades are through the roof individually, just because you're one of the greatest players to ever step foot on the field, doesn't mean you deserve a Super Bowl. There will be players whom you have never heard of that have multiple Super Bowls because it's a team effort. And at the end of the day, that's what football is all about. All right, when we come back, it'll be the final segment of the show. I'm going to tell you why the stigma of NFL quarterbacks and black quarterbacks should no longer exist. Back with the final segment of Move the Chains right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chain. It's time for the final segment of the show. It's time for the final drive. For such a long time, so many people thought that black quarterbacks weren't a thing in the NFL because black players weren't smart enough to play the position, or they weren't good enough leaders. They needed to play running back or receiver or DB. But take a look at Patrick Mahomes. Take a look at Lamar Jackson. Take a look at Jalen Hurts. And take a look at the amount of quarterbacks that are coming up through the ranks. Jaden Daniels, right? Caleb Williams. All these phenomenal quarterbacks that are smart enough to run franchises, smart enough to understand what's on them. So I think the mindset that black quarterbacks can't thrive in the NFL should be erased and eradicated and never thought of again. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch Move the Change right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's at @move_the_chains. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. We're all here for it. Hey, another banger. As always, right, for the best production crew in the business, I'm your boy, Jonathan Man Rivers, and always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And until next time right here on Move the Chains, God bless.